Hey, it's Greg on here with MaritimeGardening.com, and I'm out in my garden picking some parsnips. We're starting to get regular frost now, and once it gets really cold and start getting frost, that's the time to pick parsnips. And the reason I'm doing this video today, I've done other videos on parsnips before, but you know, really I think you could think of them as the sweet potato of the north, or the cassava or yucca or manioc of the north. These are all root vegetables that grow in southern places. Cassava actually is not unlike a parsnip in appearance, except it would have a dark skin. And that's a better analogy than the sweet potato, in fact, because the cassava will grow. I don't know if you've ever eaten it, but it's a delicious vegetable. But they grow in hot countries, but they're very forgiving for poor soils, and so is the parsnip. And they're very full of calorie rich. I believe, and I'll double check this when I edit the video, but I think certainly parsnip has more caloric value than a carrot, and I don't know where they are relative to a potato. When you eat them, they certainly seem denser than potato, and there seems to be a little bit more there, and they're certainly sweeter. So that's all, at least circumstantial or whatever. That's some evidence of higher caloric value. But my point is that they really don't get their proper due as a calorie crop. Partly, I'm not exactly sure why they don't store quite as well as potatoes, but they do store fairly well. I mean, all I do is I pull them out of the ground, and I put them on cardboard in my garage and just let them sort of dry up for a couple days. And then I just put them in tiers in cardboard boxes, leave them in the garage, which from about this time of the year onward, mid-November-ish, my garage stays 10 degrees Celsius or colder, usually around 5 degrees Celsius all winter long, because it's connected to the house, so it never gets as cold as outside, right? In winter we can get to minus 20 Celsius here, although it's typically not that cold. It's just like, if we get a cold snap, it's minus 20, it can be a little bit colder than that. Anyway, I don't think the parsnips get proper play. They're really good eating. If you've bought them in the grocery store and you don't think they're good, it's because you bought them in the grocery store. When you grow them on your own with good soil, they're bigger, they're sweeter, and if you harvest them this time of year and later, I'm just harvesting a few today for eating this weekend. I like to roast them. And this time of year, when they're just pulling out of the ground, they don't even need to be peeled. I just scrub them and cut them up in sort of thumb-sized chunks, and or even slightly larger than that, and just toss them with salt, pepper, a little bit of oil, a little bit of herbs, and throw them in the oven. And they're just delicious. I find myself eating more of them than just about anything else on the table. So if you're not planting them in your garden, I'd really consider for next year. In fact, you can plant them this time of year and have them come up next year, and I've done that with pretty good success. This one was planted last November. Not bad, right? This one was planted this spring. I'm going to talk about that more as we go along, because they're different varieties and so on. But it's a pretty easy plant in the sense that you can plant it in November when you really haven't got a lot going on in your garden, so you're not sort of overwhelmed. You can plant a lot of them. These parsnips I didn't water or do. The only thing I did all season long with these parsnips was I weeded them once and I thinned them once. That's it. And I think I'm going to do another video after this one where I show a way to plant them where you can really bring the weeds down considerably, so they're pretty much a zero maintenance plant other than a bit of thinning, right? Thin them, midsummer sort of thing, and eat the ones you've thinned out anyway, just like you would a carrot. There's people that argue that you just throw them down and let everything happen, but you get better results when you thin. You really do, because you're giving each plant some room. I don't care how soft your soil is. There's only so much nutrients to take up, and if you give each one about this much, I thin them so they're about this far apart, right? 4 inches, that's it. And my rows are so basically 4 fingers apart is the spacing, and the rows are a hand span apart, and that's the spacing. So you can still get a heck of a lot out of a given plot, right? And most of my plots are 4x8 or 4x10 or 4x6, depending on where I've got them jammed in. Easy to store, very tasty. you know, a good calorie crop, totally underrated in our, you know, in the North American, I'm speaking to that reference because that's my culture, the North American culture is something people might have a couple times a year, like Thanksgiving and Christmas, maybe, and then they probably have to force their kids to eat them. And we eat something like a potato all the time, when from a flavor point of view, I would say a parsnip has more going on than a potato. It's sweeter. So come around with me and let's have a look. Let's talk first about the different varieties. So this is from my own saved seed. Bring it up a little closer here, right? And it's good. I mean, it's more than a handspan in length, right? I mean, from about here down, it's kind of useless. That's a good size parsnip. I don't see them much larger than this in the grocery store typically, right? And this is sort of a standard size from the yield I got this year. I planted this November. I think this is some kind. I've been saving the seeds from this for so long. I don't even know what variety it was, like something crown variety. White crown, I can't remember exactly. Maybe someone can suggest it in the comments. I can look it up. Anyway, this is I believe an heirloom variety, open pollinated, and every year I leave I leave the biggest ones in the ground and let them go to seed, and then it makes a huge plant, you know, maybe 4 feet high with all these flowers, which, you know, attracts pollinators and stuff like that. And all I do with that huge plant is I just put it in a bucket, bang it back and forth. I meant to make a video on it this year, but I just didn't get around to it. You know, around August, the seeds, you'll notice the seeds, if you walk by and touch the top of the stalks, they start falling off. Well, that's the plant telling you it's time to collect the seeds, right? And I'm in zone 6A, so I mean, maybe other zones this doesn't work, but I know that if you put the seeds in the ground in the fall, they seem to make it through the winter, and they seem to come up in the spring. I don't know what the germination rate is, but if you're saving your own seeds, you get thousands, right? I mean, I got this bucket, right? I got lots of seeds, right? Plenty of seeds, and I got more. I had two. I usually let 2 plants overwinter just in case one fails, right? And the ones that I let overwinter were over 4 inches in diameter. They were monsters, right? And every year I try to, you know, the 2 biggest ones, I don't eat them. I let them go. If you look back in the past, you can see some of my other parsnip videos, and you'll see me pulling these massive parsnips out. And that's why I started doing this fall planting thing, because the biggest ones seem to be ones that just self-seeded, just seeds that fell off and landed in my walking paths were outgrowing ones I planted in the spring, which was kind of amazing to me. So I think there's something to it. Anyway, you know, we got lots of seeds in here, right? Now this one is one I got from Vessie's Seeds. You can buy these in you know, check my description box. You can get a coupon code GAVS18 for a discount on shipping, or for free shipping basically for any seed anything at that store, as long as you buy seeds. But this is a hybrid variety called Albion. I planted these in the spring, so, you know, heirloom, hybrid. See the difference? Right? And sure, you know, if the economy collapses and the world goes to hell, I can, you know, plant and grow my own parsnips with this one, right? But you know, as long as that hasn't happened, it's worthwhile to spend, you know, $3 and buy some of these, because this is the shape you like. I like to have with a parsnip, a big, fat, almost beet-like shape. That's the ideal shape for me. As the season rolls on, they store well. They're easy to peel. They're easy to deal with, right? And you're just getting a lot out of each plant. I like this shape. But, you know, really, if you know anything about hybrids, not a really fair comparison, because, you know, hybrids are sort of, they tend to have vigor, they tend to grow fast, and so on and so forth. But you can't save the seeds of a hybrid, right? So, right, these ones I've been growing, you know, 50, 100 pounds of parsnips every year, and I haven't bought seeds in years, right? Whereas these, I spend a little bit of money, but what's $3, right? I got a whole bed of these, 4x8. Probably come close to filling one of these, right? Given that they're all this size of a really good sized potato, right? So let me just show you what they look like this time of year. All right, so here's the bed I planted last November, and you know, a couple months ago, the height of summer, these were all almost 2 feet high, whereas they for the most part, the leaves, the stems have laid down on the ground, And that's just because we've had repeated frosts and cold nights, and so it's killing the greens. But that's what you want, because when the frost starts killing the greens, the plant starts changing the way it's growing and starts gathering all these, converting the starches and so on that's in the root into sugars, as far as I understand it, which makes them taste a lot better, also makes them store better. So you don't want to harvest them until they start dying and stuff like this, right? So that's the way they look, and you know, on average, I've got some pretty good results here. So let's just pull one here. What's that guy look like? That one feels pretty good. It can be hard to pull them this year because the stalks have gone soft. Of course. Stalks are soft so that they don't want to come out. There we go. That one's got a bit of a funny shape, but it's a good size, right? It's got a couple irregularities. That happens. That looks like a good one there. See if this one will be cooperative. There we go. That's more like it. Yes, that's not a bad. That was planted last November. Not bad. You know, I'd say that's 2 inches of the crown. Alright, so that's open pollinated variety. Very easy to do. Very effective. I'm completely happy with that. Or heirloom. Some people say heirloom, but they really mean, heirloom just means like open pollinated from long ago, whereas open pollinated just means, you know, any plant where you can save the seeds, and as long as it hasn't cross-pollinated with something else, you're going to get the same plant from those seeds. So here's the albion, and I didn't really thin these as well as I should have. My goodness, look at that. Look at the shape of that, just beet-like, right? Let's look at another one here. Boy, they all seem to be that sort of fat, beet-like shape. And I've already eaten some of these. They're good, and they're just going to get better. You know, I really don't pull these till I leave them in the ground as long as I can. Last year I did a video. I was out here with a pickaxe trying to get them out of the ground because the ground had frozen, and I cut it as close as I can every year, because the longer you leave them, the better they get, and it's worth it. They store better, they taste better, and so on. And even when you store them, you know, you just put them in layers. You dry them out, put them in layers in a cardboard box, put them somewhere where it doesn't get, you know, much warmer than 8 or 10 degrees Celsius. Sorry, I'm in Canada here, so I use Celsius. You can just Google that and convert it for if you're in Fahrenheit. You store them in tiers like that in a cardboard box. Or, you know, if you've got a root cellar, you've got it made, but anyway, I don't. You'll find over time they start getting a little more soft and, you know, rubbery, but that doesn't affect the flavor at all. I mean, you don't eat parsnips to, you know, you don't want them crunchy anyway, right? Like I roast them, so I want them soft anyway. And I have found that when they have that soft, rubbery texture, when I'm preparing them to cook them, they actually taste better. So I think leave them in as long as you can, and you store them. And it's one of those plants where it seems to me anyway, I've noticed this with beets as well, the longer they're stored, they seem to taste better. So, you know, I can't think of a better root vegetable for storage that's a calorie crop to recommend. They're easy to grow. You can grow hundreds of them for nothing if you can save the seeds. They store easily, and the longer they're in storage, they seem to taste better. So it's a winner all the way around. So anyway, I just thought I'd ramble on about parsnips a little bit today and talk about that. It is the sweet potato of the north, or the manioc, or the cassava, or yucca, whatever term you want to use for that. I know people in hotter countries know what I'm talking about. Don't put all your money in potatoes. They're also easier to harvest than potatoes. Potatoes, you got to dig all the ground up, whereas with the parsnip, you just pull them out. You know, and I've spent years trying to grow sweet potatoes here, and it's just a chore. I mean, I'm sure there's people in Zone 5, and I'm in Zone 6, and I'm sure there's people in Zone 5 still. I can grow sweet potatoes, and that's great, but I don't get a lot of sun here. And there's a big part of becoming a successful gardener Sure, it's trying experiments and being clever and trying to break the rules, trying to fool the plants into thinking they're somewhere than they are. But on the other hand, it's recognizing what you can grow where you are and adapting to that climate and just learning what works where you are. And for the energy and time I would have to put into a sweet potato, and I've done it, as opposed to just scattering some seeds on the ground in November and having couple buckets of these at the end of the year, right? Which just come out like that, which taste really good, and they're sweet. They are like a sweet potato in a sense, where they're starchy and they're sweet. I might even like them more. I don't know. It's hard to say. It depends on there's lots of different varieties of yam, right? But yeah, for the work, this climate agrees with that plant. There's wild things that grow all over the place that are like these, right? Even in my property, there's wild plants that look like these, that when you pull the root out and you smell it, it smells exactly like a parsnip, Queen Anne's lace I think it's called. So I mean, there's things like that all over the place here anyway, so clearly it's something that just grows wild here. This climate loves this kind of plant, so it's made for it, and it's just a lot easier to plant that than something which doesn't really want to be here. It wants to be somewhere, you know, much further south than here, right? So that's a big part of being a successful gardening is, you know, not admitting defeat, but just learning to work with what you've got and make the most of your situation, and, you know, listen to the land and what's it telling you, and looking around and, oh geez, look at that wild thing, it smells just like a parsnip. Maybe this is a good place for parsnips, right? Seems to work really well here. So yeah, just a few thoughts on that sort of thing, some ramblings. I hope you found that interesting, and if you did, please like, share, subscribe, check out my podcast, maritimegardening.com. Until next time, get out there, get at it, have fun in your garden. Thanks for watching.